Welcome to another episode of Bucket List Coach Web Show Live, and we are also at the Authors Tribe today. Stay tuned. Well, hello. This is Cindy, your host over at Bucket List Coach Web Show Live, and of course, also the Authors Tribe today. So, a little backstory. I actually was existing for most of my life, and in 2012, I became a part of an amazing travel club. And a few years later, 2018, I actually started an amazing agency to kind of help create more memories for my friends and my family. And also during that time, I started podcasting and everything, and as well as doing blogging. So it really got me excited to experience more, because we have the day that we're born and the day that we pass away. And in between that is called the dash. So I was not living the dash, and now I'm living instead of existing. And my friend Jim Menge, God, how many years have we known each other? 14 years?
Yeah, it's going on the long 14 years.
Yeah, it's been
Seems
a
like
minute.
one airline mile.
Yeah, so let's kind of talk about what you've been up to lately.
All right. Well, just, like I always do, I'm always traveling or writing about traveling or, talking to people about travel. People just love talking about it. So when I meet someone I always ask them, do you travel? And of course they have, and they tell me where they've been, and I just love to hear about them.
So where are you tuning in today?
I am in Dallas, beautiful downtown Dallas. I drove in from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and sometimes you got to drive, and it's good. For me, the goal is as long as I'm moving, then I'm feeling like I'm purposeful.
Exactly. So I'm actually going to pop out for about 1 or 2 minutes. I'm going to try to repurpose this video on a few Facebook pages, and then
Okay.
I'll be right back. So go ahead and
All right.
tell your story.
Am I still live?
Yes.
Yay.
So go ahead and tell your story. It'll be you talking, and then I'll be back in 1 minute.
Okay. So travel is important to me, and I like to go. I find places to go. During COVID, I visited Paris and Canton, Athens, Dublin, Moscow, Italy. I went to Italy, and Kingston, and I think those were the main places I went. Of course, all of them were here in Texas. I drove to all of them in a day. But, Paris, Texas, they have a big oil well that's supposed to look like the Eiffel Tower. There was nothing Greek about Athens, Texas. Canton, I don't know how they got that name there, but there was definitely nothing Cantonese about it. Maybe there was a restaurant there. Moscow, definitely run down. I was in Moscow, Russia, probably 5 years ago, and it was pretty vibrant. I mean, it was like live, so different than Moscow, Texas. Dublin has a bar, very nice bar. I was in Shamrock, Texas, which, I don't know if that's a city or not, but I was there. Kingston, Oklahoma is not like Kingston, Jamaica. And in Texas, they call it Italy, not Italy. So I don't know if that counts.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So let's talk about the published book. Let's kind of talk the story behind it. Tell me more about it.
Never travel in a straight line. That's the goal. So at a previous company I worked at, it was a membership company, and I ran the travel department. Used to do some stage speaking, and the sort of the MC and I used to kind of go back and forth because his goal was to get to the Ritz-Carlton as fast as he could. But when I talked about taking the train or taking a boat across the Atlantic or, going off the beaten path, his thing was to let people know that, hey, there's obviously more than one way to travel. And he's the one who actually told me that I never travel this guy never travels in a straight line. So that's why I named the book that.
So let's kind of go into it a little bit. Well, let's talk about, like myself, I've been working on a book for 13 years, and I'm literally on my last half chapter. And like I was mentioning to you before, I have to literally go somewhere probably for 2 to 3 weeks just so I could finish it. Because with chaos and
Yeah.
everything of what I got going on, that's my biggest challenge. So, what kind of
Yeah.
tips can you give somebody who needs to finish that book after 13 years?
The easiest thing for me is to just, you don't even, I wouldn't go anywhere to finish it. I would just go to a Starbucks and finish it. And then for me, getting everything together and compiling it was a lot of effort, but probably the bigger effort then was once it was compiled, was going in and editing it. And I think that was the bigger effort. So my advice to anyone writing a book or starting a book and not being able to finish it is just finish it. Just write down whatever you think about and don't make it perfect. Just finish it, because you're going to change so much of it around during the editing process. Like on mine, I changed chapters around, I changed people and stories. And as I was editing it, I remembered more things and I took things out. I took chapters out. I mean, I don't know, if my
Oh,
book has 20 chapters, I probably took out 20 more.
oh wow. Yeah. And yeah, you don't want to be going down that rabbit hole, because that's one of the things I talked to my publisher about. But what if I send you the manuscript and then like, oh wow, this is something. Oh, I want to add something. Or like at 3 in the morning, I'm going to think, oh, I need to add that. Because he said you could always have other additions. So just get
Yeah,
the first one out and then you could have second, third, etc. So I think
right.
that's the biggest thing. So let's kind of talk about the formatting of the book.
Okay. So in travel, so I'm a travel professional. Okay. So I was in the Air Force when I was a lot younger. And then I worked for American Airlines for 22 years, and then luxury travel,
Wow.
American Express. I worked for a train company, like railroad train company technology. I worked for a car rental company. I worked for online companies around the world. And so I'm a travel professional. It's not just my profession, but it's my passion as well, right? So
Yes.
so in the editing process, what really helped me was I segmented my book. I segmented it in the past, but I settled on a specific segmenting. And so there's 4 parts. I don't know why I'm holding it up so someone could look at it
Wow.
online. But the part 1 is wandering, part 2 is pondering, part 3 is traveling, and part 4 is returning. So for me, once I segmented it out, I started moving chapters around or combining them, and having that sort of structure is important to me, because I just felt like, just like when we travel, there's a process to traveling, like you and I were chatting about before. I'm thinking about going somewhere, and that's part of sort of a dreaming phase, which is part of technically a travel process, right? It's why am I traveling, right? Some people, they dream about it. Some people it's work. Some people, I wrote about it on my website. It's called the Traveler Hierarchy, and it lists why people travel. And so this book is a spin on that, and talks about, just each one more from an emotional point and an investment point, an experience point, purpose point, right? And that's the format of my book.
So let's briefly talk about the different sections of your book.
Sure. So in the wandering section, which is part 1, I really started writing this, because I'm a wanderer, right? And there's a quote by Tolkien that says, "Not everyone who wanders is lost," and that comes out of Lord of the Rings, right?
Yes.
And they're on a bridge, and one character says that to the other, and so I never really felt lost. I just felt like I want to wander, and that's what part 1 is. And really, it started out. In the 3rd chapter, I have a chapter called boarding passes, because I save my boarding. I go up to the counter and I say,
Oh,
can
wow.
you print me a boarding pass? And I have 2 boxes of these. These are just my boarding passes from, I don't know, I want to say from March. Okay.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. There's a few more I left off, but there's right. And so I save them, whether it's Amtrak or whether it's a cruise ship or car rental companies. They give you those printouts that you have to unfold like 100 times. I save them and I write notes on my boarding passes and people I might have met on my boarding pass. And I put them in a box. I actually don't sort them or anything. I just throw them in a box. And
Oh my
then
God. Wow.
periodically I'll go through and just start looking at them and I'll go like, oh wow, I was there. I saw that. I think the other thing I recognized was, well, I thought I flew first class a lot. I really didn't, and might have felt like it because it was an upgrade, but I definitely sat in coach. I flew Southwest a lot, um, and that's how I traveled. So that's wandering. Um, the pondering part for me is really about just the reflection, the sort of the pre-trip reflection. What is it I want to get out of this trip, right? So, and I think that's important. If you're going for a woman's trip, or you're going for a funeral, or you're going for a wedding, or you're going for a baptism,
Mhm.
you're going for a vacation on the beach, what is the experience you want to have before you leave? Right? What is your sort? And I don't know that many people think of that. I think I'm going to a christening, so that's what it is. They don't tell you is the christening is in Miami, Florida, and that there's christening happens on one day and they're going to be there for 7 days. What's happening the other 6 days, right? Um, so that's the pondering section. In there, there are 2 chapters of my favorite, Cats in the Cradle, which is about the song by Cat Stevens, and it's about how a child mirrors the parent, and that's what that's about. And then the last chapter on there is called "I'm Not Your Wife," and
Yeah.
that's about something you'll have to read about to understand what that's about. Um, the third section is traveling, and travel is actually being there, and it's about the experience of being somewhere and what you see and things like that, right?
Mhm.
Chapters there, 9/11 is a chapter in there because for 5 years after 9/11, I flew every 9/11 because
Oh, wow.
just as a celebration and a remembrance for the people who lost their lives. I wanted to celebrate their lives. I didn't want to live in fear, and there were a lot of people who wouldn't travel on 9/11 because they were afraid. Um, and I have a chapter in there called Night Trains, which is all about taking trains. I've taken trains in 40 countries, and I love taking night
Oh,
trains
wow.
because of sleeping
Wow.
on them, right? And there's a bonus on a night train as well. There's advantages and disadvantages, but the advantages the 3 things that are important to me about travel is I'm moving, number 1. Number 2 is I'm eating, so I can eat on a train on Amtrak here in the U.S. Number 3 is I could sleep on it. So, a night flight would count as that, a train, a bus, a ship, anything that moves, serves food, and I can sleep on is heaven for me. So, and then chapter 3, I also wrote about falling in love. So there's a
Oh.
love story in chapter 3 is in part 3 as well.
So is this falling in love with the person or falling in love with the destination?
No, this chapter is about falling in love with a person.
Oh, okay.
And I kind of started out because I wasn't really thinking about it. I was really kind of focused. I've just become a vice president at American Airlines, and which is a pretty big deal. And so this group of employees, I was in New York when I got the message, and this group of employees decided, hey, let's go for dinner. And they took me to dinner, and this waitress was just like everything for 2 hours. So have to read the story. Because kind of a little bit of a shock at the end, but that's the chapter people comment to me about all the time. That one in the chapter called baggage, because baggage is all
You have to
about,
buy the book to find out. Yes.
yeah, baggage is all about the baggage we carry,
Mm-hmm.
actually and metaphorically, right? So, you see people with baggage and they're like, just, man, loads of baggage. And it's like, wow. And then people who have lots of baggage,
Yeah.
emotionally, right? And then you have people who have like, the collection. It's like all the Louis Vuitton, or there's, the whatever brand of luggage it is, and they have the whole matching set. And you can imagine that they probably have the matching set of emotional baggage, anger and rage and lack of patience and everything else, right? Uh, there's people who lose their baggage, and there's people who lose their mind, and so I think I have 10 examples. When I do my public speaking, that's the chapter most of those are about. Um, just, some people don't check their luggage. Some people bring it on board the plane, and you can tell. You could tell they have their luggage because they want to make sure they have somewhere to put it. So that's that. And then part 4 is returning. And returning is super meaningful to me, maybe because it's the most forgotten by travelers. Is there's a quote I have at the beginning of that called, how do we remember to remember? And that's what boarding passes do for me, right? Is they help me to remember, right? That I should remember these things. And then each part, I wrote a poem for each part as well.
Wow.
So that's a bonus. And the main poem is called I'm a Traveling Man, which is why it says Traveling Man on my name there.
Wow, that's amazing. And so one of the things I want to talk about that I actually learned from traveling all these years is that a lot of people think if they take a vacation, it's going to fix their relationship or it's going to fix their life. And actually, you have to work on yourself first, because you could be in the most amazing cruise line. You could be on Virgin Voyage's brand new ship, right? Or you can be in Europe or wherever the case may be. Let's just say Maldives, which is a beautiful place to mark off your bucket list. But if you're not working on yourself first, the vacation isn't going to be enjoyable. I remember a few years ago, I took a cruise out of LA, and I wished this gentleman an amazing morning. Isn't it an amazing morning? Oh, it's beautiful. And all he could say is nothing but negative stuff. Like, you're on a cruise. Like, what is more amazing than that? And so I think that's super important when we're traveling. We need to work on ourselves. We need to have our me times as small business owners. We need to have our me time and focus on yourself. Do yoga, meditate, stuff like that. How do you feel about that topic as far as having a more enjoyable vacation?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is travel really heightens every emotion, positive and negative, right? If someone's angry, they're just going to get angrier when they travel. Travel doesn't really, for most people, I'll call them, for most non-travelers who are traveling, which would be kind of like most people don't think about travel. They think about getting somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or they think
Or
about
escaping from something. Yes.
Yeah, a lot of people are escaping. They're escaping from their work or their routine or whatever it is. And I don't think that. I think you carry that baggage or those issues. You do. I meet them all the time. I fly with them every day. People who carry their, whatever it is. Sometimes it's positive. Sometimes they're in love, and you can see them, and this is our first flight together, and it's nice until something doesn't happen. Like, what do you mean you didn't order me a drink? And I meet people who hate the journey. They just want to get to the destination, and so part of that travel experience is, painful. And, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. Even if there's pain all around you, it doesn't have to be painful. I remember I did this speech at one of these speeches. I had 20 minutes or so. It was kind of like a free time because I did my work speech the day before. And so I got up and I just talked about, I started out by asking the audience, how many of you like to be in line, right? There's lines for everything, man. There's like lines to park your car. There's lines to get, into the airport. There's lines to check your bag. There's lines to get a boarding pass. There's lines for the TSA. There's
Oh
lines
yeah.
at Starbucks. There's lines at Dunkin' Donuts or Dunkin', whatever they're calling themselves now. There's lines, at the at the gate. There's groups. There's A33, whatever those numbers are. There's lines when you get down the jet bridge. There's lines getting on the plane. There's lines going through the plane. There's just lines everywhere. Lines are just part of life, right? And I did my
Yes.
20-minute speech on that. People are like, "When are you going to start?" And my intention was just to talk about lines, right? And last year, like a year and a half ago, when they had all these computer meltdowns over the holidays,
Mm-hmm.
like on January 1st, I get this random text, and this lady texted me and she said, "Hey, Jim, you might not remember that speech you did about being in line, but my husband and I have been in line for almost 2 hours, and we're laughing our asses off because we remember your speech and just how you made it a fun thing and a funny thing, And I hear from people now who are like, "Oh, I used to dread going to the airport. Now I'm like, look forward to going to the airport." Just people to pay attention. What do you see? What's different? What are other people doing? Who's crying? Who's laughing? What on a flight I had from Denver to San Jose a couple weeks ago, behind me was a baby screaming the whole flight,
Oh my.
right? And at one time in my life, I would have been like upset, but the mother isn't making the baby scream. The mother's, just as like kind of fraud as the baby is. And, and so, I don't know. I just kind of stuck my hand through the seat a little bit, and the baby saw it and, kind of started grabbing at my fingers and kind of
Oh,
calmed down a little bit. And so, I think that there are ways to work through all of, including people who think the let's go on a vacation to get through whatever we're going through isn't going to work.
no.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm not a licensed therapist, but I don't see that working. I kind of see the opposite. In fact, people who go on a vacation and they come back like on separate flights.
Oh geez. Yeah. Yeah. So that's just as crucial. I mean, one of the things I like to do is like the surf yoga retreat to kind of get more in an abundance mindset. And have you
Love
ever
it.
done anything like that?
I
Costa
have.
Rica or?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, I love the sort of trips that have built-in purpose like that.
Hmm.
So I've been to writing conferences. Of course, I've probably been to 100 conferences where I spoke and there was some other purpose. And I'm not the kind of person who, I have a 20-minute speech and I go sit in my room for 3 days and until my 20-minute speech is done. I like being with the people, the audience. I like hearing what they're saying. I like, you know, I like,
Engaging. Yeah.
I like engaging them, and I like saying what they say when I'm up on stage. You know, met these people, and I kind of talk about them. I'm sure they're embarrassed. I try not to use their names, but sometimes I do. Once in a while, I do. When they're awesome. I mean, when they're not awesome, I probably want to use their name too. But uh, you know, I love trips like that, and I think that when you're doing a trip like that, a retreat sort of trip or a learning sort of trip, environment is almost everything, right?
Yes.
I think that being out of your environment in an environment that is a little more conducive to learning or a little more engaging. I'm not going home every night and I gotta, I gotta take the kids to school or I gotta make dinner or, there's always the list of things that sidetrack you. When you're somewhere else, then, you can get more things going.
Yeah, and then also if you're going on a trip like that, let's say with the group of friends, it's always good to take some extra days to yourself too. So say for instance
That's right.
the trip is 6 nights, maybe get like a 9 night
Yeah.
vacation.
Or an
So you get
extra 30 days. Stay an extra 30
yes.
days if you have a 6-day trip. 30 days is probably good. So make it a 36-day trip.
Definitely. So, do you have any bucket list items that are in your book, or is there
Oh,
some other bucket list items that you haven't created that you want to do for the second edition?
sure. So like my bucket list items.
Yes.
Yeah, I keep adding to my bucket list. I mean, I don't know that I've even really tapped my bucket list, but yeah, like I haven't been to India. There's a really good book called Around India in 80 Trains, which I think
Oh.
would be kind of cool to do.
Oh yeah.
Um, I think that, there's Bhutan is a great place. I went to Nepal. I haven't been there. I've been on the other side of Nepal, which is Tibet, and I loved it. I was there. I went from Shanghai and I took the train for 3 days with my son. And my son's like, Dad, this is what everyone says to me. Everyone under 50 years old says to me, don't they have planes? And I'm like, I took the train, the best train ride in the US, number one rated train ride in the US is Los Angeles to Seattle.
Yes, that's
And you
amazing.
go through 31 miles of track were laid where there is no road. Okay. You can't go to Vandenberg Air Force Base and see where SpaceX launches their rockets unless you're on a train.
Wow.
Okay. You go through the redwoods, you go by mountains. I mean, these tracks were laid in the late 1800s, right? And going from near San Francisco to Chicago, you go through the original transcontinental railroad tunnels. Moffat Tunnel, right, is one of the original tunnels. There's only one track that goes through there, so trains have to wait at one end or the other. So bucket list items for me look like things that are super
Majestic.
unique, old. I love
Hmm.
old hotels. I mean, when I go to a city, I always look for a train station,
Wow.
because it's going to be old. And I was in Philadelphia in I think in May, and you know I I just took a local train to get to the train station and loved it. I mean, I just architecture. They're rebuilding all these train stations and fixing them up, and they're super cool. So those are things. And the other thing I would say to you when you want to finish your book is, you could also take a cruise, right? 7-10 day cruise, and sit in your cabin for a few days, and go take a cruise that has some really bad ports, or a cruise you've already
Yeah.
done. You know, um, they have these things called cruises to nowhere. Have you heard of those?
No, let's talk about that.
So a cruise to nowhere is typically a 3-day cruise. You leave a port like Los Angeles or Fort Lauderdale or Miami or Sydney or Cape Town or a port, and you go for 3 days, and you typically go outside the 15-mile range. Sometimes it's more than that, depends on the country, where you can gamble because you're not in the territorial waters of that country. So in the US, it's 15 miles. And so they just go, they park for 3 days, 15 miles out, and you gamble. And then 3 days later, they come back. And that would be a great cruise for you to go finish your book on. Just a 3-day
A
trip to
3 day
nowhere.
boost cruise.
Cruise to nowhere is what it's called.
Wow, that's interesting. So we're about to end the show, but we can go a little further if you have some really good content. And I would like to have you on probably about once a month, and we could talk about
I
different
love it.
categories. Like next time we could talk about trains,
Oh,
and
yeah.
just every month we can do a different topic. I would really enjoy that.
That would be great. And that's the concept of my book, is never travel in a straight line. Is, don't always get on the same plane, don't always go to the same airport. Don't all, when I travel, I try to make sometimes as many connections as I can, right? Like when I came back from San Jose, I went San Jose, Phoenix to Dallas to Tulsa, right? I mean, I could have gone San Jose, Dallas, Tulsa, but why do that when you can miss a flight?
Exactly. And I actually have a really great idea because just a few months ago in March, I was in Las Vegas at the Las Vegas Travel Agent Forum. Over
Oh,
300 vendors, and majority of that event, only had one vendor day, but all the other days is nothing but presentation after presentation after presentation. I got
Oh
so
yeah.
much information. And there's a gentleman there that actually lives in Mexico City part time, lives in the Orient part time, and his actual home is in New York City, but he goes in between there. And you would be a great person to speak to be as a
Oh,
designated speaker. So I would love to connect you with the people who run
okay.
that convention, because that's going to just add so much value for people that are in our industry.
Yeah.
Have some ideas on how they need to live a better travel life and all that.
Yeah. And even for the people who sell travel, which is really what my background had been. I mean, I probably had been to 50 countries,
Yes.
just when I worked for American Airlines. And my job was to go visit travel agencies and travel companies and speak at conferences, not so much about travel technologies. I mean, that was a part of it. That was kind of the purpose for me being there. But it was really about what experience are you creating for your clients,
Hmm.
and and that's really what made me want to write this book is what's the experience, and if you use a travel agent, which is I do. I use travel agents a lot. They still have, for me, they still have more inside knowledge than the internet has. I think the internet
Definitely.
is good if you're on a scale of 0 to 10. I think they work fine from 0 to 6 or 7, and you might find some stuff the further up you go, tidbits. But if you really want the inside track, man, find someone who's been there, done it, seen it, and you can talk to, because they're going to help you understand what you don't know. When I go search a place online, I'm typing in what I know, not what I don't know.
Hmm.
And a travel agent's going to help me with, what do you like to do? And those are my best, by far, the best trips I've ever had is when I would talk to someone either locally or someone who had been there a few times, who was a professional at it, who could understand me a little better and how quirky I travel, and make it
Hmm.
make it happen for me.
That's so awesome. So, in closing, one of the things I like to talk about is pay it forward. So, what random act of kindness would you like to perform this week, either to somebody that you know online or someone that you meet in your travels?
Okay. Well, the first thing I will say is 100% of the profit from my book goes to Tourism Cares and
Oh,
St.
wow, that's
Jude.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I pay it forward every time someone buys a copy of the book, whether it's this copy or the online copy. And every 6 months, I pay out to both organizations. So that's important to me. And then in terms of paying it forward, I'm having meetings, while I'm here in Dallas. I'm having one meeting with a gentleman who, he's super depressed. He was in the travel
Mhm.
business, and
Wow.
he's just been ill for a long time. And his thing was, hey, the next time you're in town, will you have breakfast or lunch or coffee with me? And that's the best part of my life, is just sitting down with someone and talking, letting them talk about what they're experiencing or what they want to do and how they want to do it. And I probably have 3 or 4 of those going on. I'm meeting with the gentleman on Friday whose father passed away earlier this year. And, I offered to write some chapters about him because he traveled a lot. Uh,
Wow.
but every time I talk to him about it, he still relives that experience with his father. And and just this week, I heard of another friend who lost his father. And so, I'll reach out to him as well. You know, you get to sort of travel when you can, and you should, just like people, you know, you should live the experience with them, not just the passing by them. So
Exactly. And
that's
it's
important.
making me emotional hearing you. As you know, I've been dealing with a parent with dementia, and yeah, we had two amazing trips before she got sick. We did some Vegas stuff and some Hollywood, and And then you've been very supportive of that, because we did have to switch our appointment from last week. So thank you so much for that. It's, yeah, as a child with a parent who has dementia, it is a very trying time. But what's really important to me is continuing friendships like ours that have been all these years over the years, and it'll continue
For
until the
sure.
end of our days. And just, creating experiences, being around people who celebrate us, that's really key to happy life. And waking up every morning and just looking up and just, thanking the universe or God, however you look at it, for
Yeah.
another day of life. Because when we walk out that door, we don't know what's going to happen. Someone could hit us, we could slip and hit our head, and that's the end of our life. So that's why
Yeah.
it's so important to not exist like I did for many years and start living. In closing, one more question. How do you want to live out your dash?
Live out my
Your dash.
dash.
Yeah. So the day that there's the day that you're born and the day that you pass away, you're living
Oh,
that dash. What else do you want to do in your
oh,
life before the end of your day?
oh. I think that I had this experience a year ago, and I felt like, and I felt this way for 20, 25, 30 years even, that, if I died today, I would be okay. I feel like I've lived 3 or 4 lifetimes already in this lifetime. I've been to over 100 countries. I've met so many awesome people 50 years later, I had lunch with this guy. I knew him, well, not 50 years. I probably knew him 40 years ago.
Wow.
And people in the Air Force I'm hearing from again. And, I think I'm blessed that I've had these many connections around, and I think the connections are so important. I would just want people to know I love them. I think about people all day long, and I want people. For me, it's like I would say on my last day, I've lived a great life.
And a
You know,
big fat steak, right?
big fat mushroom steak. Yes.
No. So what
So
restaurant would that be?
probably like Ruth's Chris or something like that, or
Oh, that
Fleming's, or
actually was my culinary bucket list. But before I got into travel, at the end of my career, I actually was working for a cruise line, Norwegian Cruise Lines. But shortly before that, I was a cook at Ruth's Chris in Las Vegas. So that
yeah,
literally was my first dream, was to become a chef, and then my second dream was to be a part of travel space. And of course, I do a lot of orphanage work. If you're interested, I would like to partner and collab with you
yeah,
on that. So,
yeah, for sure. By the way, one last thing for me is I
mhm.
told people on Facebook that if they'll post a picture of them holding the book or the e-version of it and put it online, that I will include them in my next book, which I'm working on now and hope to get finished in probably, I might get it finished before you get your first one finished, but I'm just
Yeah.
letting you know. If you want to
Wow.
get yours done, get working on it. But yeah, so if you post your picture holding the book on Facebook, I will include your first name in my next book and something about you.
Well, I'm game on that. And also my call to action for everybody who's listening, if you go to Bucket List Coach Web Show Live on Facebook and also YouTube, if you subscribe to YouTube, I will give you a 6-day, 5-night hotel, and I will also give you a copy of this book. So let's see who can do
Oh,
that.
nice.
Yes.
All
So
righty.
I'm going to
Thank
put
you.
you in the green room. Anything else before I close out?
Thank you so much for doing this. I love it.
Thank you. So just hang tight for 30 seconds and I'll be right back. So there you go. Definitely check out this book. It's something that you need to add to your book arsenal, and go out there and live your life, celebrate others. Think of 5 people every single day to say that you love and appreciate. This is Cindy over at Bucket List Coach Web Show Live.